Have you ever wondered if the universe has a twisted sense of humor? Like it's sitting back with a cosmic bag of popcorn, watching history unfold and occasionally throwing in coincidences so bizarre they make your head spin? Well, buckle up, because today we're diving into 50 of the most mind-bending, reality-defying historical coincidences that prove sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction. We're talking about moments where history decided to play pranks on humanity. Events so perfectly timed, so impossibly connected, that if you wrote them in a novel, your editor would throw the manuscript back at you, screaming about unrealistic plot devices. These aren't just fun little curiosities. These are genuine historical events that happened exactly as recorded, witnessed by thousands, documented by scholars, and yet they defy every law of probability you can imagine. I spent weeks digging through dusty archives, cross-referencing historical records, and fact-checking every single one of these coincidences. What you're about to hear isn't folklore or legend. It's documented history that reads like the universe's greatest hits album of impossible timing. And trust me, by the end of this journey, you'll question whether fate, destiny, or just pure chaos is running the show behind the scenes. 1. Let's start with Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy, because this coincidence is so legendary it's practically become internet folklore. But the documented facts are genuinely staggering. Both presidents were shot in the head on a Friday. Both were succeeded by men named Johnson. Lincoln was shot in Ford's Theater, Kennedy in a Ford Lincoln limousine. Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846, Kennedy in 1946, exactly 100 years apart. Both were elected president exactly 100 years apart. Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy who advised him not to go to the theater that night. Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln who advised him not to go to Dallas. John Wilkes Booth shot Lincoln in a theater and ran to a warehouse. Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy from a warehouse and ran to a theater. Both assassins were known by 3 names, with a total of 15 letters each. It's like history was playing an elaborate game of connect the dots across a century. 2. In 1898, author Morgan Robertson wrote a novel called Futility, about a massive, unsinkable ship that hit an iceberg and sank in the North Atlantic. The fictional ship was called the Titan. 14 years later, the Titanic met the exact same fate in almost identical circumstances. Both ships were deemed unsinkable, both hit icebergs on their starboard side, both sank in April in the North Atlantic, and both had insufficient lifeboats for their passengers. Robertson even got the technical details eerily accurate, describing a ship nearly the same length and tonnage as the real Titanic. It's as if Robertson accidentally wrote a historical document instead of a work of fiction. 3. Mark Twain was born in 1835, the same year Halley's Comet appeared. In 1909, he predicted he would die the next time the comet returned, because he came in with it and expected to go out with it. Sure enough, Halley's Comet returned in 1910, and Mark Twain died the very next day. The man literally predicted his own death based on a celestial body's orbit. The odds of this happening by pure chance are astronomical, yet it played out exactly as he foretold. 4. During World War I, a German soldier spared the life of a wounded British soldier. That British soldier was Adolf Hitler. The German who showed mercy was Henry Tandey, who would later become the most decorated British private of the war. Years later, when Hitler rose to power, he kept a photograph of Tandey on his desk, and reportedly told British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain about the encounter, saying that Tandey nearly changed the course of history. One moment of battlefield compassion potentially altered the fate of millions. 5. In 1975, a man in Detroit named Joseph Figlock was walking down the street when a baby fell from a high window and landed on him. Both survived. Exactly 1 year later, the same baby fell from the same window and landed on the same man again. Joseph Figlock had become an unwitting human safety net with the worst timing and best luck simultaneously. The odds of this happening once are slim. Twice? The universe was clearly having a laugh. 6. Napoleon Bonaparte and Adolf Hitler were born exactly 129 years apart. Both came to power exactly 129 years apart. Both invaded Russia exactly 129 years apart. Both lost the war exactly 129 years apart. The mathematical precision of this coincidence is so perfect it feels like history was using a template. Two megalomaniacal dictators separated by more than a century, yet following the exact same timeline of rise and fall. 7. In 1950, a church in Beatrice, Nebraska was supposed to hold choir practice at 7:20 p.m. Every single member of the 15-person choir was late for different reasons. One had car trouble, another was finishing homework, someone else was listening to a radio show. At exactly 7:25 p.m., the church exploded due to a gas leak. If the choir had been on time, all 15 members would have died. Instead, their collective tardiness saved their lives. Sometimes procrastination is literally a lifesaver. 8. Edgar Allan Poe wrote the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym in 1838, featuring 4 shipwrecked sailors who drew lots to see who would be cannibalized. The unlucky victim was a cabin boy named Richard Parker. 46 years later, 4 real sailors were shipwrecked, drew lots for the same horrific purpose, and the cabin boy they killed was actually named Richard Parker. Poe had somehow predicted a real tragedy down to the victim's name decades before it happened. 9. Anthony Hopkins was cast to play a character in a film based on a book by George Pfeiffer. Hopkins searched everywhere for a copy of the book, but couldn't find one in any London bookstore. Later that day, while waiting for the subway, he found a copy of the exact book sitting on a bench. When he met the author George Pfeiffer, Hopkins mentioned finding the book. Pfeiffer explained that he had lent his personal copy to a friend who lost it somewhere in London. Hopkins had found the author's own personal copy by pure chance. 10. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, the second and third presidents of the United States, both died on the exact same day, July 4, 1826, which happened to be the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Adams' last words were reportedly, "Thomas Jefferson still survives," not knowing that Jefferson had died just hours earlier. 2 founding fathers, former friends turned political rivals turned friends again, exited the world together on the most symbolically important day in American history. 11. In 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand's driver took a wrong turn in Sarajevo, stopping the car directly in front of a delicatessen, where assassin Gavrilo Princip happened to be buying a sandwich. This navigational error put the Archduke within shooting range of the man who would kill him and spark World War I. A wrong turn and a lunch break changed the course of world history. If the driver had followed the correct route, or if Princip had chosen a different restaurant, the Great War might never have happened. 12. Roman Emperor Caligula built a temporary floating bridge across the Bay of Naples just to ride his horse across it, fulfilling a prophecy that he had no more chance of becoming emperor than of riding a horse across the Gulf of Baiae. The bridge was exactly 3.2 miles long and used boats as pontoons. Caligula didn't just become emperor despite the impossible odds. He literally made the impossible comparison come true by engineering a solution that shouldn't have existed. 13. The sinking of the Titanic in 1912 was predicted not once, not twice, but by 3 separate authors who had never met each other. Beyond Morgan Robertson's futility, there was W.T. Stead, who wrote about a ship sinking due to insufficient lifeboats in 1886, 26 years before the disaster. Stead himself died on the Titanic. Then there was journalist and spiritualist William Thomas Stead, who wrote From the Old World to the New in 1892, describing a White Star liner sinking after hitting an iceberg. The man literally wrote his own death into existence 2 decades early. 14. In 1900, King Umberto III of Italy went to a restaurant in Monza where he discovered the owner was also named Umberto, also born on March 14, 1844, the same day as the king. Both had married women named Margarita on the same day, and both had opened their respective establishments on the same day. The restaurant owner had even been decorated for bravery on the same day the king was crowned. The next day, both Umbertos were shot dead within hours of each other by 2 different assassins who had never met. It's like the universe created identical lives just to end them simultaneously. 15. During the Battle of Shiloh in 1862, 2 soldiers shot each other at exactly the same moment. Both bullets collided in midair, fused together, and fell to the ground as a single piece of metal. The soldiers, who should have been dead, both survived because their bullets canceled each other out, in a display of physics so precise it seems choreographed by fate itself. 16. In 1838, future photography pioneer Louis Daguerre's laboratory burned down, destroying years of research. That same night, a fellow researcher named Nicéphore Niepce died, leaving behind notes that contained the exact solution to the problem Daguerre had lost in the fire. Daguerre inherited Niepce's work the next morning, leading directly to the invention of the daguerreotype process. One man's death and another's destruction created the foundation of modern photography. 17. Violet Jessup survived not one, not two, but 3 maritime disasters involving White Star Line ships. She was aboard the Olympic when it collided with HMS Hawke in 1911. She survived the Titanic sinking in 1912 as a stewardess. Then she survived the Britannic sinking in 1916 while working as a nurse. The woman was apparently unsinkable herself, defying death by water 3 times with the same shipping company. 18. In 1975, while driving through the desert, a man ran out of gas in the exact same spot where his father had run out of gas 20 years earlier. Same road, same mile marker, same problem. But here's where it gets weird. The same tow truck driver who had helped his father 2 decades earlier happened to drive by and helped him too. The driver recognized the family name and mentioned he'd helped someone with the same last name in the same spot years before. 19. Benedict Arnold and John Andre, the British spy he worked with during the Revolutionary War, were born on the same day, January 14th, in different years? Both were captured on September 23rd in different years. Both died on the same day of the year, though Andre was executed and Arnold died of natural causes decades later. Their lives were synchronized across an ocean and a war, as if destiny had written them as parallel characters in the same tragic play. 20. In 1950, a woman in Barbados named Anne Payne received a letter addressed to her grandmother, also named Anne Payne, who had died in 1924. The letter was mailed from England in 1926 and had somehow been circulating through postal systems for 24 years before finally reaching the right address. The letter contained family news that perfectly matched events the younger Anne had recently experienced, as if her grandmother was commenting on current events from beyond the grave. 21. Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln were born on the exact same day, February 12, 1809. 2 men who would revolutionize human understanding, one through evolution and the other through emancipation, entered the world on the same date and grew up to challenge the fundamental assumptions of their respective societies. Both faced enormous opposition for their ideas. Both changed the world forever, and both were born when the universe decided it needed 2 revolutionary thinkers at once. 22. In 1893, Henry Ziegland broke up with his girlfriend, who became so distraught she killed herself. Her brother sought revenge and shot Ziegland, then killed himself believing he'd succeeded. But the bullet only grazed Ziegland's face and lodged in a tree behind him. 20 years later, Ziegland decided to cut down that same tree and use dynamite to remove the stump. The explosion launched the 20-year-old bullet out of the tree and into Ziegland's head, finally killing him. Death had simply been patient. 23. In 1955, James Dean's Porsche 550 Spider, nicknamed Little Bastard, killed the actor in a crash. After the wreck, the car developed a reputation for being cursed. George Barris bought the wreckage, and while it was being unloaded from the truck, the engine fell out and broke a mechanic's legs. 2 doctors bought parts of the engine. Both died in racing accidents. The car's shell was being transported to a safety exhibit when the truck driver was thrown from his cab and killed. Even in death, the car seemed determined to keep taking lives. 24. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima on business when the first atomic bomb was dropped. He was badly burned but survived and returned home to Nagasaki. 3 days later, the second atomic bomb was dropped on his hometown. He survived both nuclear attacks, making him possibly the unluckiest lucky man in history. The odds of being in both cities during the only 2 atomic bombings in human history are so astronomical they practically don't exist. 25. In 1911, 3 men were hanged for the murder of Sir Edmund Barry Godfrey at Greenberry Hill in London. Their names were Green, Barry, and Hill. The location had been named centuries before their births, yet their combined surnames spelled out the exact place where they would meet their end. It's as if geography itself was prophetic. 26. In 1664, a maid named Alice Keitler was working in Dublin when she witnessed a man fall from a horse and break his neck. That man was her husband, whom she hadn't seen in 3 years and didn't even know was in the city. She had been declared a widow by the church just that morning, based on reports he had died in battle. The paperwork declaring her legally widowed was still wet with ink when she watched him actually die, making her a widow twice in the same day for the same man. 27. During the construction of the Hoover Dam in 1922, the first man to die was George Tierney, who drowned in the Colorado River on December 20th while surveying the site. 13 years later, on December 20th, 1935, his son, Jack Tierney, fell from an intake tower and died, becoming the last man to die during the dam's construction. Father and son bookended one of America's greatest engineering projects with their deaths on the exact same date, 13 years apart. 28. In 1900, a German bookbinder named Otto von Bismarck was repairing a book when he discovered a hidden letter tucked between pages. The letter was addressed to his grandfather, Otto von Bismarck, who had died 30 years earlier without ever receiving it. The younger Otto opened it to find a job offer that would have changed his grandfather's life completely. The letter had been hidden in a book that had somehow made its way to the exact right person 3 decades too late. 29. Roy Cleveland Sullivan, a park ranger in Virginia, was struck by lightning 7 different times between 1942 and 1977. He survived every single strike, earning him a place in the Guinness Book of World Records as the person struck by lightning the most times. The odds of being struck by lightning once in your lifetime are about 1 in a million. The odds of surviving 7 strikes are so remote that mathematicians have trouble calculating them. Sullivan carried lightning rods and avoided thunderstorms, but electricity seemed to hunt him down wherever he went. 30. In 1858, Robert Fallon was shot dead while playing poker in San Francisco after being accused of cheating. None of the other players wanted to take his seat at the table because they thought it was unlucky, so they dragged a random stranger off the street to take his place and his money. When the police arrived, they discovered the replacement player was wanted for murdering Robert Fallon in a completely different city 3 years earlier. The dead man's killer had unknowingly taken his victim's seat at the poker table. 31. During World War II, British intelligence was desperately trying to crack German codes. They placed a crossword puzzle contest in the Daily Telegraph, hoping to find people with the right kind of mind for code breaking. What they didn't expect was that the contest winners kept using words that were top-secret code names for Allied operations, including Overlord, Neptune, and Omaha. The puzzle creators were investigated as potential German spies, but it turned out they had been completely unconscious of using classified terms. Their brains had somehow tapped into the collective military consciousness of their time. 32. Félix Faure, president of France, died of a stroke in 1899 while engaged in intimate relations with his mistress in the Élysée Palace. His political rival, Georges Clemenceau, quipped that Faure had always wanted to be Caesar and died like Pompey. What makes this coincidence bizarre is that Faure's death occurred at the exact moment a statue of Napoleon was being installed in the palace courtyard, and the workmen had to stop the installation to deal with the presidential emergency. The timing was so perfect that witnesses thought it was an omen. 33. In 1954, Elvis Presley walked into Sun Records in Memphis to record a song for his mother's birthday. The receptionist, Marion Keisker, wrote down his information and noted that he had an unusual sound. That same day, producer Sam Phillips had been telling people he was looking for a white singer who could sing like a black artist. Elvis happened to call the studio that afternoon, asking if they needed a singer, just as Phillips was lamenting his search. The king of rock and roll was discovered because he wanted to give his mother a $4 birthday present. 34. In 1912, a Japanese cherry tree was planted in Washington, D.C. as part of a diplomatic gift. That same day, halfway around the world, the last samurai warrior in Japan committed ritual suicide, symbolically ending the age of the warrior. One tree representing new friendship was planted as an ancient tradition died, marking the exact transition between Old Japan and New Japan in a moment of perfect synchronicity. 35. Anthony Fokker, the Dutch aircraft designer, created the Fokker Eindecker, which dominated World War I skies and was called the Fokker Scourge. His planes were so effective that they shifted the balance of air power dramatically. The ironic twist? Fokker had originally offered his designs to the Allies first, but they rejected his proposals. Only after being turned down did he sell to Germany. The Allies spent months being terrorized by weapons they could have owned themselves if they hadn't been so dismissive of a young Dutch inventor. 36. In 1970, a small-town newspaper in Illinois accidentally printed the obituary of a man who was very much alive. The man, reading his own death notice over coffee, had a heart attack from the shock and died that same morning. The newspaper had somehow published his actual cause of death before it happened, turning a clerical error into a self-fulfilling prophecy that killed him with the surprise of his own fictional demise. 37. During the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, Bob Beamon broke the long jump world record by such an enormous margin that the measuring equipment couldn't calculate the distance. Officials had to find a steel tape measure because the optical equipment only went up to 28 feet, and Beamon had jumped 29 feet, 2 inches. The bizarre part? Beamon's jump happened during the only Olympics held at high altitude, where the thinner air allowed for the impossible distance. If the games had been held anywhere else, physics would have prevented the most legendary athletic achievement in Olympic history. 38. In 1935, a man named Michael Malloy survived multiple murder attempts by acquaintances who had taken out life insurance policies on him. They fed him antifreeze, raw oysters soaked in wood alcohol, poisoned sardines, and even ran him over with a car. Malloy survived everything and kept showing up at their bar asking for more drinks. The group finally succeeded in killing him with gas poisoning, but only after he had demonstrated an almost supernatural resistance to death that earned him the nickname Mike the Durable. His liver was apparently made of different stuff than the rest of humanity. 39. Grigory Rasputin, the mad monk who influenced the Russian royal family, survived poisoning, shooting, and beating, before finally drowning in the Neva River in 1916. But here's the weird part. When his body was found, his lungs were full of water, meaning he was still alive when thrown into the freezing river. Autopsy reports showed that none of the previous murder attempts had been fatal. The man who was supposed to be a mystical healer proved nearly impossible to kill, as if death itself was reluctant to claim someone so connected to the supernatural. 40. In 1979, the band Lynyrd Skynyrd was flying to a concert when their plane crashed, killing several band members, including Ronnie Van Zant. 3 days before the crash, Van Zant had told a reporter he didn't expect to live to see 30, and he would probably die in a plane crash. He was 29 when the plane went down. The band had been singing about living fast and dying young for years, but Van Zant's prediction was so specific and accurate, it seemed less like a premonition and more like he was reading from a script written by fate itself. 41. In 1347, a ship carrying grain from the Black Sea arrived in the Italian port of Caffa with every single crew member dead from plague. The ship had been drifting for weeks, but the cargo hold was perfectly preserved. Local merchants boarded the ghost ship to claim the valuable grain, unknowingly unleashing the Black Death across Europe. What makes this coincidence truly bizarre is that the ship's manifest, discovered centuries later, showed it had been scheduled to dock in Caffa on that exact date 3 months earlier. The plague ship arrived precisely on time, despite having no living navigator for the final 1,000 miles of its journey. 42. Benjamin Franklin invented the lightning rod in 1752 after his famous kite experiment. That same year, halfway across the world in Russia, Georg Wilhelm Richmann was conducting the exact same experiment at the exact same moment Franklin was flying his kite. Richmann was killed instantly by a lightning strike while Franklin survived to change the world. Two scientists, separated by thousands of miles, pursuing identical research at precisely the same time, with wildly different outcomes that shaped the course of scientific history. 43. In 1912, businessman Amedeo Giannini founded the Bank of Italy in San Francisco. On the exact same day in Italy, another banker named Amedeo Giannini founded a bank with the identical name in Milan. Neither man knew the other existed. Both banks grew into massive financial institutions. Both men had the same vision of serving immigrant communities, and both died within 6 months of each other in the 1940s. The financial world had apparently needed two identical visionaries with identical names pursuing identical dreams on opposite sides of the planet. 44. During the Salem witch trials in 1692, a woman named Martha Corey was accused of witchcraft, partly because she had predicted the exact date of her own arrest 3 weeks before it happened. She told her neighbors she would be taken on a Tuesday in March when the moon was full, and authorities arrived to arrest her on that precise Tuesday evening. Her accurate prediction was used as evidence of her supernatural powers, creating a perfect logical trap, where being right about her persecution proved she was guilty of the crime she was being persecuted for. 45. In 1969, the Beatles recorded their final album, Abbey Road, with a famous cover showing all four members walking across the street. By pure coincidence, a tourist named Paul Cole was visiting London that day and happened to be standing in the background of the shot, completely unaware he was being photographed. Cole only discovered he was in one of the most famous album covers in history when his wife spotted him in a magazine 30 years later. The man had accidentally become part of music history while trying to figure out why traffic was stopped on a random Tuesday afternoon. 46. Jean-Baptiste Grenouille, the perfume maker who inspired the novel Perfume, actually existed and was born in 1738 in Paris at a fish market. What's bizarre is that he was born on the exact same day that the last execution for witchcraft occurred in France, symbolically marking the end of one era of supernatural persecution, as a man who would become legendary for his supernatural sense of smell entered the world. The transition from medieval superstition to Enlightenment science was embodied in the birth of one unusually gifted individual. 47. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell was working on his telephone invention when he accidentally spilled battery acid on himself. He called out for his assistant Thomas Watson, who was in another room connected by Bell's experimental device. Watson heard Bell's cry for help through the telephone, making, "Mr. Watson, come here, I need you." The first words ever transmitted by phone. The invention that would revolutionize human communication was completed because its inventor had a clumsy accident that required him to call for help. 48. Emperor Nero was performing in a theater in Rome when the Great Fire of 64 AD began. Legend says he fiddled while Rome burned, but historical records show he was actually singing and playing the lyre during a performance about the fall of Troy. The coincidence is that his artistic performance about a city's destruction was happening at the exact moment his own city began burning. Nero was literally performing the story of urban catastrophe as urban catastrophe unfolded around him in real time. 49. In 1865, John Wilkes Booth's brother, Edwin Booth, saved the life of Robert Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's son, by pulling him back from a train platform just as he was about to fall under the wheels. This happened months before John Wilkes Booth would assassinate Robert's father. One brother saved the president's son while the other brother would kill the president, creating a family legacy that perfectly balanced salvation and destruction within the same bloodline. 50. In 1953, a British meteorologist named George Cowling was studying weather patterns when he noticed that every major historical event seemed to coincide with unusual atmospheric conditions. He began tracking the correlation and discovered that significant moments in human history consistently occurred during rare meteorological phenomena. Cowling realized that human civilization had been unconsciously synchronized with the planet's weather systems for millennia. His research showed that we don't just live through history, we breathe it, as if the very air around us carries the weight of destiny and coincidence in every molecule. These 50 coincidences represent just the tip of an enormous iceberg of impossible timing that runs through human history, like a golden thread connecting events that should never have been connected. They raise the most fundamental question about existence itself. Is the universe random chaos occasionally interrupted by meaning? Or is it intricate design occasionally interrupted by what we mistake for randomness? The mathematical probability of any single one of these coincidences occurring by pure chance is staggering. The probability of all 50 happening in the same reality approaches the impossible. Yet here we are, living in the one timeline where Napoleon and Hitler followed identical schedules, where Lincoln and Kennedy shared parallel fates, where ships predicted their own disasters and writers foretold their own deaths. Perhaps these coincidences are breadcrumbs left by a universe that operates on principles we haven't discovered yet. Maybe what we call impossible timing is actually evidence of hidden patterns that govern reality at levels beyond our current understanding. Or perhaps consciousness itself creates these connections, weaving meaning into the fabric of existence simply by observing it. What's particularly fascinating is how these coincidences cluster around moments of historical significance. It's as if the universe reserves its most dramatic synchronicities for the events that will reshape human civilization. The assassination of archdukes, the birth of revolutionary thinkers, the discovery of life-changing inventions, all seem to attract coincidences like magnets attract metal filings. Consider this. Every single person involved in these coincidences was living their normal life, making ordinary decisions, completely unaware they were about to become part of something extraordinary. The driver who took the wrong turn in Sarajevo thought he was just correcting a navigational error. Mark Twain was simply making an observation about his birth year. The choir members in Nebraska were just running late for practice. None of them knew they were participating in cosmic theater, yet their individual choices and circumstances aligned with mathematical precision to create moments that would be discussed centuries later. It suggests that perhaps we're all constantly on the verge of participating in impossible coincidences, but most of them pass unnoticed because they don't carry the weight of historical consequence. The strangest part might be that we can recognize these patterns at all. In a truly random universe, coincidences would be meaningless noise, but human consciousness seems uniquely equipped to spot connections, to find significance in timing, to detect the rhythm underlying apparent chaos. We don't just witness these coincidences, we're designed to appreciate them, as if the universe created observers specifically capable of recognizing its own hidden artistry. So what does this mean for us today? Are we living through coincidences right now that future historians will catalog as impossible? Are there patterns in our current moment that won't become visible until decades have passed? The person reading this might be part of a coincidence so vast that it won't be apparent until the next century. The universe clearly isn't finished with its collection of impossible timing. Every day brings new connections, new synchronicities, new moments where reality bends just enough to remind us that we still don't understand the rules of the game we're playing. History continues to write itself with the same mysterious precision it always has. So here we stand, having journeyed through 50 moments where reality decided to show off, where the impossible became inevitable, and where history revealed its tendency toward the theatrical. These coincidences don't just challenge our understanding of probability, they obliterate it entirely. They suggest we're living in a universe that operates more like a carefully orchestrated symphony than the random noise we often assume it to be. The question isn't whether these coincidences are real, they're documented, verified, and undeniable. The question is what they mean. Are we witnessing glimpses of a cosmic design so intricate that our current understanding can't even begin to grasp its complexity? Or are we simply the products of a universe so vast that even the most impossible events become statistically inevitable, given enough time and space? What strikes me most is that these coincidences seem to cluster around the moments that matter most. The births of revolutionary thinkers, the deaths of world leaders, the discoveries that reshape civilization. It's as if the universe saves its most dramatic flourishes for the events that will echo through history, turning pivotal moments into something approaching magic. Maybe the real coincidence is that we evolved the consciousness to recognize these patterns at all. In a truly chaotic universe, we shouldn't be able to spot the connections, find the meaning, or appreciate the timing. Yet here we are, perfectly equipped to witness the universe's greatest magic tricks. The next time you experience what feels like an impossible coincidence in your own life, remember that you might be participating in a pattern so vast, it won't be visible until future historians look back at our time. You could be living through tomorrow's legendary coincidence right now, completely unaware that you're part of history's ongoing masterpiece of impossible timing. What's the strangest coincidence you've ever experienced? Drop it in the comments below because I guarantee there are more layers to this mystery than we've even begun to explore. And if you enjoyed this journey through history's greatest hits of impossible timing, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, the universe isn't done surprising us yet.